Hi, good evening, and welcome to the daily Rambam She'ar, 3 chapters per day, lesson 218, Hilchois She'ar Avot haTum'ah from chapter 3 until 5. It is interesting that in Ashgoche Protis we are approaching very quickly the holiday of Hanukkah, and the victory of Hanukkah is being described in the Nusach, in the text of our prayers, where the struggle between the Greeks and the Jewish people is being marked with the miracles of finding the pure can of oils, which implies that their entire target was to target the concept of purity and bring in tumah, contamination and defile towards the Jewish people. And indeed, this month, which is the month of Kislev, which is so rich with so many Hasidic holidays, starting from Tes Kislev, Yud Kislev. Today we marked Yud Gimel Kislev, Yud Dalet Kislev, and then will be the Chag HaGeula and Rosh Hashanah LeChasidus, which will be the Shabbos. And the entire month is one long Farbrengen, which marks important events where light was overcoming darkness, where the struggle between good and evil took place and finished with the victory of good. And like in any war, there is two types of wars. There is a war in conventional methods, and there is a war with unconventional tools that are being used. If we'll apply the term in Hasidus, there is what is called a struggle in Kelim and Oiris Pnimim, and there is a struggle that is being waged via Makifim, internal tools or transcendental tools. So in Chassidus it's being explained, while the Isurei Ma'acholis, the prohibition of food, is harming and damaging the internal system of the Neshama. However, when it comes to Tumah and Taharo, the Tumah, a spiritual impurity, is harming the makifim of the neshama. Based upon this, we'll understand there is a famous passage that divides and systemized the Shisho Sidrei Mishnah, the 6 volumes of the Talmud, which is basically the roots and the origins of the halacha Yad HaChazoko that we are right now learning, is being divided by the posuk Vehoyo emunas itecho choisen Yeshuis chochma v'das. Each and every word of this posuk represents a different volume. So the last 2 words, which are chochma, representing the Seder Kodoshim, which deals with the idea of korbanos, which after all korbanos, as we said before, the idea of achilas odom, achilas mizbeach, achilas kohanim, it's all about type of food that is being integrated in an internal way, in a pnimius decay way. However, the idea of taharis is being defined with the word das. Das is the middle sphere, and the roots and the origins of das goes as high as the keser, to such an extent when das is being nimno, when it's being counted, the keser is not nimno, and so on. So it is interesting that in the kvius of this year, throughout the entire month, the idea of taharo, the month that represents more than any other months the victory of the taharo over tumah, is being this year so clearly, when it's so much needed, the actual victory in Einei Boso as well, Begashmius Lamato Miasot Fochim, this year, throughout the entire month, the Sefer Taharu is being learned, and Be'ezrat Hashem, with the schus of learning both by ourselves and teaching and sharing it with others, the Hashem Almighty should send a speedy victory, Begashmius Mamesh, a recovery to everybody who needs a release from captivity, and an increase of Da'as, Bechol Hoilom Kuloi, Da'as Esavayo, Kamaim Layom Mechasim. So to summarize the general subject of the 3 chapters of today, they are all included in one word, Natasha. And the abbreviation of Natasha, in our case, the first subject is the Nevelas Oiftohir, which is Nun NTS. The second subject is Tes Shin, which is Tumas Shotzim. And the third subject of today is Shin Hei, which is the idea of Shichvas Hazera. The first tumo, Nivlas Oif Tohir, which we will be covering, the first chapter of our shiur, is first to translate in English. We're speaking over here about a carcass of a kosher bird. When the tumo of such a phenomena is different than all other type of carcass of animals that we have covered yesterday, because the only way that a carcass of a kosher bird will be able to transmit tumo is only via the esophagus, when a person actually storing inside his esophagus this nevelo, nivlas oiftohir, only then the person will become tomei. These requirements are being derived from the text of the posuk itself, since when the Torah covers this particular tumo, the Torah uses the word v'nefesh. Nefesh means beis hanefesh, the housing of the soul, which is the area of the esophagus. The minimum amount that is required is a volume of aleph size, which is a kezais. While he is storing the carcass in his esophagus, he will transmit the tumo also to his garments and other utensils that he is in physical contact while it is there. However, after the tumo left his esophagus, then he won't be able to transmit it any further, like any type of rishon letumo, which is a vlada tumo, that is not transmitting the tumo, the impurity, to another human or utensils. All it is able to transmit is only to oichlin and mashkin only, food and drinks. Despite the fact that we have said that the nivlas oif tohir, the carcass of a kosher bird, will be able to transmit tumo only while it is in his esophagus, nevertheless, if he intended to use it as a food serving, so in addition to the tumo which will affect him while he is storing it in his esophagus, it will be viewed as well as any tomei, impure food, which it is a lighter type of tumor. So therefore it will be able to transmit tumor even while it is outside his esophagus, to like any type of rishon letumor, and it doesn't need to have a hechsher, to have a prerequisite of any type of liquids, since anyway it is affected by a very severe tumor, and for that reason it doesn't require any hechsher. Needs to be a direct contact between the carcass and his esophagus, and if he covered this nevelo with any form of a fiber that separates between the actual flesh and his throat, he won't be affected in this tumor. However, if he covered it with another form of food, let it be a vegetable or any sort of leaf, a edible leaf, then he will be tomei. The reason, since food cannot be separating another food. Min beminoi, any type of its own kind, einoi choitzetz, it cannot create a separation. The tum'ah, the impurity that is being brought upon him by having the carcass in his esophagus, is only when it is entering to his stomach. However, if he is intending to vomit, while he is vomiting and it reaching the area of his esophagus, it's not going to impact any impurity upon him, since this type of impurity is only effective when it's going southbound towards his stomach and not northbound when it goes back in the format of vomiting it. The measurement of kezais is very critical. Even when a person swallowed an entire organ, which in other contexts, as we have learned before yesterday, regarding to a nevelo of a behemo or a chayo, so then a aver sholem, a full organ, will have a special treatment. This special treatment is not there when it comes to nivlas oif tohir, and the amount of kezais will be critical. Also, the requirement of flesh is very critical. For that reason, any wings or other parts which are not edible, not going to be mitztaref, added and treated as part of the kezais. Even if there is already a kezais baso, a aleph size of flesh, but it dried out or it became rotten that even a dog won't be able to eat it, so it will be tohir, it won't impact any impurity. However, if it dried out and the moist can be restored by putting it into any form of warm water, then it will impact impurity. As we have learned yesterday, regarding the function that a slaughter will be contributing even to a type of a creature which is treifo. And treifo, very shortly, we said yesterday, is any type of a defect that with this defect the bird won't be able to survive more than 12 months. Any type of defect when it comes to eating the bird, in our case, it is prohibited even if it was slaughtered properly. However, in context of tumo and taharo, of purity or impurity, if the bird actually were slaughtered, so then it will save, it will help the animal not to be exposed to impurity transmission. Even though that in connection with the slaughter, a crime was done. For example, he was slaughtering the kodshim, a holy offering outside the temple, which is a very terrible crime, or chulin boazo, any type of a korban should be slaughtered outside the temple. He slaughtered it inside the temple. Both of them are heavy crimes. However, as long as the slaughter was done properly, it is helpful to escape from the exposure of tumo. And if a person actually touched such a bird, or in our case, stored it in his suffix, he will be tohil. However, if a meliko was done, a meliko is a practice that was done in the temple to birds in the process of offering, which was basically a usage of the nail from the back of their neck. And that's how the bird offering were offered in the temple. So this is a practice that reserves only in a context of Kodoshim. If he has done this practice to anything that is not Kodoshim, anything that doesn't belong to Beis HaMikdash, so this particular bird is indeed nevelo, will be treated as a nivlas oif tohil. If happens to be the bird was actually Kodoshim that was fitting to a korban, so then the meliko helps to the bird to remain tohil and not to transmit any tumo. Similar case, a eglo arufo, a calf that is being chopped by the neck in case that a murder took place between two cities and it is not clear who the murderer is, and I'm taking to the closest city and the elderly people going to the closest river and they chopping the animal. So though it was not a proper slaughter, but it is a proper practice that fits that particular situation. As such, it's not going to make the dead cat, eglo arufo, as a nevelo, as an item that will transmit tumo. It's not. It's going to remain tohil. The point is that as long as a practice that the Torah requires in a certain situation was done according to the guidelines, this is sufficient to not expose the dead animal to a impurity transmission. A bird that is not kosher to begin with, as we all know that biblically the Torah counts only the birds that are not kosher, because all others will be kosher biblically. So all those birds that are mentioned in the Torah, if they are dead, though they are dead, they don't experience any form of tum'o. They won't transmit any tum'o. Also, a limb, an organ that was chopped, even from a kosher bird while she was alive, this won't transmit any tumor. The second chapter is surrounding about the second subject, which is the impurity of shrotzim. Shrotzim are crawling animals or rodents which are mentioned in the Torah, and there are 8 of them. The way that they are commonly translated, here they are: the weasel, the mouse, the ferret, the hedgehog, the chameleon, the lizard, and the snail, and the mole. Now, each and every one of them, when they are in a state of death, so they will be able to transmit tumah to a human being and vessels by direct contact, and earthenware when they are placed in the air of any earthenware. However, and when it comes to maso, carrying, it won't transmit any tumah. The minimum measurement for a sheretz to transmit tumah will be in a size of a lentil, which is typically 5 millimeter circumference. If it happens to be a full organ of these creatures, then has no measurement, and it will be able to transmit tumah even if the size is a fraction in very small, as long as it is a aver kibriosoya organ according to the original form, which is flesh, sinews, and the bones. The blood will be treated as flesh as long as it is connected to the flesh. The skin of those rodents will be viewed, some of them will be viewed as the flesh as long as he did not process them. Some of them will be pure, and which means will be tohir even before their process. So again, after the process, in any case, the skin will be tohir. Before the process, some of them will be, some of them won't. The flesh of a sheretz, of a rodent that became rotten until a point that is not fitting a achilas kelev for a dog to eat it, this becomes tohir. Same applies if it dried out. However, if the actual structure of the entire rodent still exists, despite his dryness, he will transmit tumah. And according to the Rambam, this entire tumah is only a rabbinical. When we're speaking about the measurement of a kezais, if for one reason or another shrank to less than a kezais, this sheretz will be pure. If it was originally less than a kezais and it expands to a kezais, only rabbinically it will be impure. If, however, it was originally kezais, then shrank and then came back, then even biblically it will be tomei. Any other type of rodents except the one that we have mentioned, they not transmitting tumah whatsoever, not even as tumas oichlin, not even as food items that are impure. In the 3rd chapter, the Rambam deals about the tumah of shichvas zera, which is basically any form of semen emissions. The requirement, first of all, it is considered to be avatumah, and this is from the same type which will make impure in contact odom, kalim, a human being, any utensils, and earthenware in the air. It's not going to transmit tumah when a person carries it, and the one who touches it, while he is touching it, he will transmit tumah to his garment while he is touching it. Whether a person actually touching it or a person himself sees it in his own flesh, he becomes tomei, becomes impure. However, the person who sees it in his own flesh, he is not required to a measurement of a lentil, but even b'mashehu, even when it's little bit, any form, he will become impure. The minimum age for a person to become impure in this type of impurity, only when the semen comes from a human, male human, above the age of 9. It must be white color, sticky, and he must feel sense when it actually coming out of him. If it came out without any desire and without any erection, it won't be metame. Then there is also a rabbinical application of impurity, even if a person dreamt a sexual dream and he woke up and he found his flesh hot, and despite the fact that he haven't noticed a semen, nevertheless, since the presumption that it was, however, it dried out or wiped out in his flesh, nevertheless, he will be impure. But in order for him to be impure, he needs to have both requirement. Have this dream, the a sexual dream, and he needs to have a hot flesh. If only one condition was met, then he is not going to be tomei, he will be pure. Sometimes, even when a person urinates and some appearances in his urination comes out, although it is not a semen emission, nevertheless, he will be impure in this impurity. Even when a person goes to the mikveh, however, he had no chance to urinate before he goes to the mikveh, he comes out from the mikveh, he may be tomei. The reason, because some traces of the semen emission may still be left there and they will come out only via urination, since he didn't have a chance to urinate before entering the mikveh. So the assumption that he is still impure, unless he was young and healthy, which then most likely in the emission he had, everything came out. The indication or the way to test whether he's young and healthy, he's giving over here a method. If he's able to stand on 1 foot and tie or untie his shoes in this position, this is an indication that he is strong, young, and healthy. This impurity applies not only for the man who sees this semen, but even the woman who had intimate relation with her, despite the fact that she is not going to be impure since she touched the semen, because any form of maga beis hastoim, any hidden place, cannot consider it as a mago, but nevertheless, her involvement with the relation is like she herself, it's being so this carry this semen. If, for example, was no emission, it was an intercourse without emission of a semen, then both of them will remain pure. Also, when a woman managed to spit the semen later, as long as it was within 3 oinois. 3 oinois is a period of a day is considered a oino, a night is considered a oino. So within 3 oinois after the relationship, it will be tomei, will make obviously make her tomei, and make also the person who touched this type of shechva zera as tomei. After this period, she is not going to become tomei, and the shechva zera itself not going to be metame. The reason, because the presumption that it lost its potency. Also, this semen will transmit tumor as long as it is moist. If it is dried and it cannot go back to its moist via warm water, it will be pure. Any semen of a non-Jew is not going to transmit tumor. Thank you so much, and all the best.